So how can the Minnesota Vikings complete their sweep of the Green Bay Packers? The answer might just be in the last one. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast. A little belated Friday episode for you. Hope you all understand. I've been a little bit under the weather, feeling better now, but so thank you so much for coming and hanging out with hashtag everydayers, especially on this sort of sporadic holiday week that it's been. So thank you so much for coming and hanging out and making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. Today's episode is brought to you by GameTime. Download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off of your first purchase. So what I want to do today, we'll have our bold predictions later. We'll skip the over-under this week. I don't think the lines are out yet as of this recording, and to boot, I can't. I'm out of town, so I can't give the rabbits lettuce and do that part anyway. So we'll skip the over-under this week. And instead, let's do this. Since I didn't really get to sort of do my full wrap-up of the Seahawks game, because if you're wondering why there was no Wednesday show, it was a holiday thing, and I'll kind of do an abridged version of that. But what I noticed in that, at least on the defensive side of the ball, was that the Vikings did a really good job of punishing super lobby deep shots. They were really sound deep. And that kind of leads really well into who the Packers are and who Jordan Love is as a quarterback and how that kind of matches up. And they're going to have to repeat that if they want to win this game. This coming game against the Packers, obviously the stakes, I probably don't have to tell you about that, but the way it works, just so we're all clear, if the Vikings win this game against the Packers, it doesn't matter what happens in Detroit 49ers, then Week 18 is for the division. That's it. If they lose, then Week 18 can still be for the division. If Detroit loses to San Francisco, then they'll both have the same record, and Week 18 will be for the division. But if the Vikings lose and Detroit wins, then Detroit clinches the NFC North in the 1 seed. I think in the 1 seed. I don't think Philly can, or maybe Philly can still catch them if the Vikings beat them Week 18. So they'll probably bring all their people. Plus, Dan Campbell, I don't see Dan Campbell like ever resting starters. So that game will be tough no matter what. But if the Vikings lose and Detroit wins, that puts the Vikings guaranteed into a wild card spot, and then it's a matter of are you the 5th or the 6th, then the juice gets kind of taken out of that game. So that's where we're at. But, you know, you heard me talk about it in the crossover with Peter. Doesn't it just feel like, all right, here comes the flattening? It seems to go that the Packers get beat the first time by the Vikings. The last 3 years, going all the way back to Zimmer, 2021. And then they have some late matchup, the stakes of which vary, right? The last few times the Vikings and Packers have played this game, the season's either been over or it's been the kind of, well, they could win and get the right 7 games of help and get the playoffs, but it's pretty much over, or they've already clinched in the case of 2022. And so the stakes have always been weirdly like too late for it to matter. So that's what Peter was talking about, that like for the Packers, this game doesn't matter. They're a wild card team no matter what, and it's just a matter of 5th, 6th, or 7th. So you're going on the road, you're playing somebody that won their division. Like that's, so who cares? Even though like, yeah, sure, you'd maybe rather play like Tampa than LA, or maybe rather play LA than Philly. Like NFL teams, I think, have too much respect for one another. They understand. They look across that and see guys they were all conference with, right? So it's going to be a tough matchup regardless. So what the Packers show in this one will be interesting. But the stakes are not so much. So really, though, what I think is this is going to come down to, because I don't really buy that the Packers are just going to like mail this one in. I think they're still mad. This is what has happened all of the last 3 years. They've come in pissed off for whatever reason. They thought they should have won the last one, right? Go back to 2021. I think there was a ref call. And in 2022, they were like, oh, it's just the first week. Weird things happen. We're actually better than you. And, go last year where the Vikings won in Lambeau pretty comfortably, but it was, Jordan Love hadn't quite kicked in yet. And maybe they feel the same way now where Jordan Love is just a second half of the season guy. So second half of the season, Jordan Love is this interesting thing, but I in particular want to talk to you about the interception that Dallas Turner had. So when you are zone dropping, I talked about this in the Dallas Turner episode, and all of the Dallas Turner Patreons you can find on patreon.com/LukeBrownNFL. They should be free, although I haven't had time to free up the last ones from the Chicago game. I'll do those as soon as I can. If you're trying to watch it and it's still giving you a paywall, just message me. But one of the things I always brought up in those was coverage, right? Dallas Turner in coverage, it's an important part of his job. And, it eats into his pass rush snaps, which is going to eat into his pass rush productivity versus somebody like Jared Verse, who's not doing that as much. And being good at that is really important. So the way that I like to try to watch how this is doing is, first off, how is he opening? And that means his first few steps, right? Where is he pointing his hips? Where is he going to? And how fast is he going there? And with Dallas Turner, getting there quickly is never the issue. He's a very fast player for an outside, for a pass rusher, dropping out of pressure. Although he will play off-ball linebacker here, every once every game or two, which is kind of funny. That's, I think, part of their kind of piecemeal way of replacing Ivan Pace, who, by the way, is practicing in full. Looks really optimistic for him coming off of IR and playing in this game. If they do that, the actual transaction will probably happen Saturday. So that's usually when they officially do it. But I don't actually know why that is. I'm sure there's some reason to do that based on what counts as you get your game check and stuff. But also Harrison Smith, full participant. Fabian Moreau, the only player looking right now like he's not going to play. Everybody else was either full participant or off the injury report. But on the interception, if you watch the all 22 of it, the way he opens up is really accurate. Too much width, and they'll cut inside and they'll get a catch on you. There's actually one of the first plays in the Bears game, the Monday night whiteout Bears game, was Addison doing just that. A linebacker widened too much out, and Addison kind of cut inside and ate up all that space and was wide open. If you get too much depth and you don't get out to that width, then you give up the outside, right? So where that route is going, whether it's an inbreaker or an outbreaker, is really important for making that decision. Do I want a whole bunch of depth? Do I want a whole bunch of width? Do I want to just run right at the guy, turn around, get an interception? And so you have to relate to routes. That's the key here. Relate to routes. That's the phrase that should be, kicking around in your mind. Relate to the routes, not to space. Back in the old school days, old Pete Carroll, back in, I'm talking USC Pete Carroll, pre-Seahawks. It would be landmarks. You would drop, you go to the hash, you go to the numbers, you go to the, halfway between the hash and the numbers, 20 yards deep. You'd tell someone where to be, they would be there, and then you would kind of hope, okay, you've got enough proximity to wherever a receiver is that you can break on any ball. Quarterbacks didn't used to be as good at beating that, and now they're really good at beating that. So we can't do that anymore. We have to adjust our zones to where the actual routes are, and that means what you will see. You'll see Gink do this. You'll see Grenard do this too. They will look at the routes for 1 second. They'll give one quick peek, 1 step's worth of a peek at the route. And what they're calculating is how many are going vertical. How many of these routes look like they're going to be deep routes versus how many are, setting up really small little stuff, right? How many deep, how many shallow. And so they're usually going to have the first in or something like that. Or they'll just have, whichever one is kind of in their area. They'll have the curls, they'll have the slants, he'll have that. So this was an outbreaker, and it took forever. It was on the backside of the play. So Dallas Turner had lots of time to get there. He was there in time, but Geno Smith gets flushed out. Josh Metellus chasing, and the receiver behind him uncovers and actually gets open for a second, but he doesn't get open enough. Geno makes a bad decision on this, and then you just break on the ball and you catch it. The reason I'm saying all of this is that the way the Packers play, those kinds of opportunities late in the down, being able to feel that guy uncover and know where you're going to have to go to the ball, is going to be absolutely vital to stopping Jordan Love from hitting you on the same kind of plays. We'll get to that next. This episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by GameTime. GameTime is the best place to find last-minute tickets on whatever it is that you are trying to get to. Whether it is maybe you're trying to get to the Vikings-Packers game, this upcoming one, if you're trying to get last-minute tickets to that, you got to check it out on GameTime. You can also find your way to any sporting event, concerts, comedy, all of that stuff. They have the lowest price guarantee. That means that if you find a lower price somewhere, same section and row for less, GameTime will credit you 110% of the difference, and they have the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. So head on over to the GameTime app, download it, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download GameTime today. What time is it? Game time. Moving right along here with the Locked On Vikings podcast. Thanks again for making Locked On Vikings your first listen of the day each and every day. So that was the main thing I wanted to explain that interception off of the Seahawks game. A couple other insights. I think the O-line, at least in the first part of the game, was pretty dominant, especially in the run in terms of just pushing guys around. They gave up a little bit of penetration here and there. I think Cam Robinson had a fascinating day. I think Aaron Bradbury had a fascinating day with some really, really impressive ups and then some not so great downs. But I don't think it's coincidence. You saw how the Vikings ran the ball right away against Seattle, and that's a physical team. That's very encouraging heading into this Packers game, which is also a very, very physical team. They'll all be indoors, right? So it's gonna be, I think, bruising. And then have to go in and play the bruising Lions too. Like, this is going to be a tough kind of run up to the playoffs. But that's what it is, right? And like, there is a world. I was thinking about this. Like, there is a world. I was talking to Peter about this. I forget if it was on the crossover or not, but I'll just say it again. There's a world where the Vikings could win out. They beat the Packers if they beat the Lions. They do that. They get the 1 seed, no holds barred. There's no more strength of victory watching because the Eagles lost. So they win out, they get the 1 seed no matter what. And then they would have a bye. And then if the Packers are the 6th seed after that, which they probably would be, and the Lions are the 5th seed, if either of those two teams win, it's very likely that they are the bottom seed left in the NFC, unless the 7 seed, if it's the Commanders. I think it could technically still be, I think it has to be the Commanders, right? It could be someone, it could technically still be like the Rams or something. But if that's, whoever the 7th seed would have to beat the Eagles. If that doesn't happen, then the Vikings' first matchup in the playoffs would be whichever one of the other road teams won between the Packers and Lions. So you could go like Lions, or you could go Packers, Lions, and then let's say Packers in the divisional and then Lions in the NFC Championship. And that could be like, they could just have a month of just those two teams. That would be a very fun scenario that meant a lot of things went right. But I digress. The point I was trying to get at was that this is a physical team, and we saw the Vikings be physical against Seattle. That's encouraging. But we have to, also, I'm so sorry if the audio just went totally crazy. I'm on various Wi-Fis and various, situations. So if my audio is going crazy, this is a travel thing. I'll be home next week. It'll all be over. We'll get through it together. But, it's encouraging to see the Vikings be physical against a physical team in a way that I don't think they were against Arizona. So they're getting that. And they have to do it again, though. That doesn't mean automatically that they're going to be physical. They got to repeat it. But it's encouraging to see proof of concept. Elsewhere, the thing this game is going to come down to, I think, not unlike in the Seahawks game, it really came down to, it's a lot of these games have come to this. A lot of these Vikings games, the closer games, where the other team really has had a potential game-winning or game-tying drive. The Vikings will send a lot of people. It's like they'll play it a lot differently when they're up 2 scores versus when they're up 1. They're up 2 scores. They will drop 8 a lot. They'll be really soft. They'll play the clock a little more and usually give up a score. And I think they're kind of okay with that as long as it takes long enough. But when they're up 1 score at the end of the game, and I think they approach the second half or the halftime 2-minute warning similarly, and I hate it. But when it's the end of the game, they haven't given one of these up yet. One of these end game drives. That's wrong. The Lions got one on them. So only the Lions. but they've been really good at those. So what keeps happening, you can think about it in the Arizona game, ended on a pick. Seattle game ended on a pick. Jets game ended on a pick. All of these that could have been, they were really, truly game-winning drive attempts. And they all ended on the Vikings send a huge blitz. Quarterback gets flushed out of the pocket, forces something, bad play, pick. Jags game, that was another one. Ended functionally on a pick. They've been really, they've done that now a quarter of the times that they have played. that almost every time it's a one-score game, the Vikings have clutched up on offense, scored, and the defense on the way back has not just forced fourth down, hasn't just made it take too long or anything like that. They've gotten an interception because of a pressured quarterback. So if this game comes down to that again, and I think Jordan Love's one of the better quarterbacks in the league at that specifically. He loves to do that. That is kind of the whole thesis of Jordan Love, is that when pressure comes, he's going to, rip off some back foot heater that, lands exactly where it's supposed to. So you have to do that again. That is the strength on strength matchup that I feel this whole thing is coming down to. Josh Metellus is going to be chasing him, and he's going to heave one up who catches it. And what can't happen, this is what happened last year. Because as much as last year's game is easy enough to write off, two of the last three of these Packers blowouts that are in my mind are easy enough to write off because there were backup quarterbacks in. It was Sean Mannion, it was Jaron Hall, and then the 2022 game was the slip and slide cleats debacles. Terrible day for them, but 2 out of 3 you can write off. Obviously, the Vikings have everybody, but a lot of people healthy for this game. But defensively, things fell apart for those teams as well. Obviously, the Zimmer 2021 defense was pretty broken. So we're not holding that against them, and we're not going to hold Donatel against them. But last year, the Vikings were very figured out by the end of the year. I don't think they're nearly as figured out now. And, how you get into, how you move the ball against the Vikings is you see them blitzing and you throw deep over it, but you have to throw deep and you have to throw fast. So they need to be glances. They need to be posts. They need to be seams. You need to get those guys going. So the key here is going to be on those hook drops, just like Dallas Turner did, just like on he got his interception. He's going to have to do this right and well. And he's going to have to, he's going to have to be, and everybody, from if Ivan Pace plays, which it looks like he will, from, Blake Cashman, Josh Metellus, everybody's going to have to be really accurate about that. The key to the game is going to be those first few steps after the snap on the blitz and on the coverage. If you mess up and you don't space it out correctly, you give Jordan Love time. He's going to walk into this game with his brain completely in the mode of, I have to get the ball top of my drop every single time. We're going to do 3-step drop, get the ball out, 3-step drop, get the ball out. Ideally, that makes the offense contract. But what we saw in that last Packers game at US Bank Stadium last year, even though there's so many reasons that it doesn't apply, this part does. It's that they are capable of pushing the field or capable of quickening their offense without contracting their offense. You can't say that about the Bears, right? You just saw it. We just saw it on Thursday night against the Seahawks. You send 7 at them, they're going to just start throwing perimeter screens. We saw it on Monday Night Football against them. The Lions are another team that doesn't have to. They could go deep. And so, you're going, why couldn't they get pressure on Jared Goff? Well, they got the ball out quick every single time. I think the Seahawks did a good job of that as well. You want to beat this Flores defense. That is what you have to do. It's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's what you have to do. And teams the only ones that can do it are, teams that, the only ones that can move the ball against the Vikings are teams that can do that. And it's what's cool about the defense is that kind of immediately eliminates 20 teams from being able to function against you. But the ones who can, you still have to kind of play straight up, and you have to now start winning some matchups. So let's move on now to your bold predictions, what you think is going to happen in this humdinger of a game. This episode is brought to you by Hillsdale College. Hillsdale is a Christian college in Michigan, and they have a bunch of online classes that are free for you to go check out if you're into that kind of thing. It's a lot of what you would have learned like in high school, right? It's those kinds of topics like social studies topics or things like, chemistry or, let's talk about the Great Gatsby. Those kinds of classes. They have 40 of them that are free for you to check out. It is all free of charge. It's easy to sign up and you can take things at your own pace. They've got all kinds of readings and extra videos and tests and quizzes and stuff that you can get into if you really want to master whatever they're doing, or you can just like sit back and watch. It's fine. But if you are interested in stuff on those topics from that kind of perspective, you can enroll right now at hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Once again, that's hillsdale.edu/lockedon to sign up free of charge. That's at hillsdale.edu/lockedon. Let's move on with your boldest predictions of the game. So I'm totally winging this and trying to find the ones where that you guys, the most serious ones, but there is one I know I loved that came from Johnny Munt Apologist. I don't have last week's bold predictions in front of me. If one did hit, I promise you I will circle back to you on that. I do not believe one did because I would have heard about it, but we'll check on that. So for now, let's just talk about today's bold predictions against the Green Bay Packers. And the first one comes from Johnny Munt Apologist, who says, Jordan Love, Green Bay's star QB, hails from none other than Orange County, land of, unexpectedly, Hot Pockets. That's right, these microwavable cheese turnovers first hit the scene in 1980, courtesy of an Orange County family. Coincidence. Speaking of cheese turnovers, on Sunday, number 19, Daniel Whalen, will have his punt blocked, and number 80, 1980, I get it, Bo Melton fumbles or drops a pass, leading to a pick. This is a little specific. I love the idea of of how you got to cheese turnovers. Fantastic stuff. Let's open it up a little bit, and I will say Bo Melton will be responsible for a turnover. We'll leave it open like that. If it's one that he drops and then it's tipped and it was definitely his fault, not Jordan Love's, we'll count those. Bo Melton will be responsible for a turnover, or Daniel Whalen will have a punt block. Let's give it an either or. We don't need an and on that, and we can open it up a little bit. But I absolutely love what we've done here. Tim Pietz says, in the spirit of Christmas, Sam Darnold and Jordan Love combined to gift the defenses 7 turnovers. Of course, the holiday season, we have to be very giving. I think I always get one like that around this time of year, which I absolutely love. The turnover thing is, obviously it's part of it. Both Love and Darnold have had, really, I think they were both leading the league in interceptions. Like they were 1-2 for a while this year. And I think they both managed to calm it down a little bit. Sam Darnold protecting the football has been the key to the success that the Vikings have had in the last 4-ish weeks, where they've been, comfortably beating teams or beating, Seattle's a good team. Beating that team that's an accomplishment. But the 7 turnovers, and that's 7 turnovers on the quarterback. So a strip sack will count it. But the, Aaron Jones fumble, we will not count. TJ Hawkinson catches it and fumbles it, we won't count that. Let's move on to the next one. I love this one from James K, who says, Maplewood Toyotathon has a deal for a new Tacoma iForce with an APR of 4.99% over 72 months. Similarly, Jordan Love will have an interception rate of 5% and be held to less than 72 yards passing through the first half. 5% interception rate is insane. You think about that as on 20 passes, that would be 4 interceptions. That's, oh no, I'm sorry. Wow. I'm no longer the kid you got copied off in math class, huh? 5% interception. Okay, a normal interception rate for a season is 2 or 3. So that's a double. That's a pretty crazy interception rate, and less than 72 passing yards throughout the first half. Isn't it this great when I'm doing this live and I can't just go back and edit that out when I mess up the math? Josh says that AVG will get his 3rd pick 6. This is not the game I would pick this for, but that's what makes it bold, I think. I would have picked this on the Bears game and he almost got it, but the Packers post Rodgers go downfield a lot. They're kind of like the Vikings in that they don't have like quick game that they love to do as much. I mean, everybody has some quick game, but like they don't necessarily, like, they'll do like a couple of screens like any offense will, but that's not their game in the way it is for, say, Chicago or say Seattle does a lot of those. So you kind of only get like one shot at this. Vikings 129 says, one of my favorite childhood memories is watching AP chase Dickerson's record against the Packers. On Sunday, JJ breaks out early and we're on record watch by the end of the half. Unlike JJ breaks the record, more than 336 receiving yards to usurp Flipper Anderson. What a beautiful way that this would go down. In the last couple of years, Justin Jefferson hasn't really been the Packer killer, so much as Jordan Addison has. And obviously, a couple of years ago, you had the Jair Alexander. He got like one good rep on JJ before he changed his cleats, and that was it. But they totally, that was the slip and slide disaster blowout game. And Packers fans kind of been living on that for the last couple of years because they haven't really gotten another good like highlight on JJ. And Jefferson, I mean, he grittied in Lambeau. I think getting that touchdown in Lambeau last year or last time, week 4 this year was, I think, kind of the end of that. It should be, but you're going to still see that play forever because Jair Alexander he's probably not going to play again in this game. So we're ducking him. We're ducking him. I don't want to be like everybody else and accuse Jair Alexander of like ducking a good receiver or anything like that. I think he's just hurt a lot. But still, like, he's also older, and like I don't know how many more of these matchups we even get. Like if there is a matchup next year with Jair and Jefferson, and Jefferson beats him, you could probably go say like, well, he was really old. So what's that? I think it's hard to know what to think of this game right now at FanDuel. As of this recording, at FanDuel, it is a Vikings by 1.5. It's a home field advantage, but to do a little bit of a Zoever undery thing, the books have had a really hard time pinning this one down. These are two white hot teams. Vikings are on an 8-game win streak, and the Packers are on a 4-game win streak. And they've won 5 of their last 6. Pretty insane. So one of these streaks is being broken. One of these teams that simply has showed us, well, they just can't lose, is going to lose. And if it's the Packers, it doesn't mean much to them but spite. If it's the Vikings, it changes, everything about their last game. Maybe even makes them put their backups in so they don't get the Lions hangover in the playoffs, right? But whatever it is, we will be here. I'll be hanging out with you, and we'll be on for this. I mean, it doesn't get any easier. There's a really good chance that the Packers are the worst team left on our schedule, right? If you think the Lions are better and then they get play whoever in the playoffs, the Packers could be the worst team. It could be this and only harder. And if you want to be the Super Bowl contender that the Vikings fancy themselves as, and I think they've earned that, you got to beat these teams, right? I mean, you got to beat Seattle's, you got to beat the Atlantas, you got to beat the teams that are, kind of in their tight division races at 10-ish wins, and they've beaten all those. Beat those. You go win your Texans games, right? And you certainly have to win your Titans games and your Bears games. But these are the ones that you don't necessarily expect them to all win, and you can still say that was a really good team. But if you want to win the Super Bowl, go out and beat them. Go head into Ford Field against a banged-up Lions team saying, we can actually take the division that you've been anointed with all year. We can take it. Come on, give me that. Give me that game. It's going to get flexed to Sunday night if that happens. I want that so bad. Almost more than beating the Packers, I want that Lions game to have that intrigue. I don't want it to be like, everybody's kind of already set and, we're going to see Nick Mullins by halftime. I want it to matter. So that's what I want more than, kicking the Packers from the 5th seed to the 6th seed or to the 7th. Like, who cares, right? They're going on the road and they're playing somebody. So that's where I'm at. I will see you guys all next week. I'll be back on my normal setup. So all of these scheduling and tech issues hopefully should be a thing of the past. And as always, Skull.